In this video, we will try to compute a running total using three different methods. First, we will try to use visual calculation, and then we will create a measure. And also finally, we will use reset on month year. And this is a report page. And as you can see, there are a couple of slicers. There is a month year coming from the calendar table. And also there is another slicer where the issue subcategory is coming from the main table. And there is a table on bottom where you have your date and number of complaints. And also there is a line chart where for the x-axis date and for the y-axis number of complaints. So what we want to do is as we are aware of it, running totals, we want to add up all those values in this particular column. And running total or cumulative sum, it is a summation of sequence of numbers. So the initial value is shown there, and we want the incremental addition of all the other values. Based on the slicer selections, those values will be added up and it will be shown in the total. So that is the whole idea. So the quickest way of doing it is by using visual calculations, and you have to select the visual. And if you select this table visual, we can see that there are three ellipses on the top. If you click on that, and you have an option to use a new calculation, new visual calculation. So there are predefined templates, including running sum, or you can use the custom function too. So that is one way of reaching out and creating a visual calculation. And also on the main ribbon, you can click on new visual calculation as shown, and you can also create that from there, a visual calculation. But remember, you have to select the visual, then only those visual calculation button is enabled. Otherwise, it's grayed out. So we will just click on the three ellipses, and we'll use the predefined template, running sum equal to running sum, and we have to add the field. In our case, we want to add the number of complaints. So it's a very simple thing, right? So this is the quickest way we can create running sum. So we don't have to worry about anything else. There are predefined templates. So once you commit to it, you have the values there. As you can see, it's by default, it is decimal. So you can go and to the properties and change the properties to whole number, data type. And also you can add the 1000 separators. So once you have the 1000 separator, you can see that the running sum is shown here. In case if you want, you can go and edit it, and you can do a lot of things, right? Please read up on visual calculations, Power BI. There is exhaustive documentation. It will tell you what are the limitations too. So that's one of the ways you can create a visual calculation. Some of the visuals you can copy and paste in the different canvas area. And in this case, we are trying to use the visual calculation, what we have done already. So in case if you remove the number of complaints, the visual will not work. So other way of doing it is, if you don't want that number of complaints line to be shown on the graph as shown here, you could just move that field to tooltips. So that way, since it's a visual calculation, it needs a number of complaints. So that's the reason why the error showed up. But otherwise, this is one way of keeping total number of complaints in tooltips, but also showing only the running sum on the line chart. So this is a pretty way, right? So you can add data labels, you can do all the formatting. And if you click on any of those slicer selections, those both visuals will change. That is a basic interactive functionality in Power BI. All the visuals will change. So this is a perfect way and fastest way to do it. And you can make all the formatting changes too. And let us try to, now that this is out of the way, we will try to create another measure, and we will use the regular create measure and try to create running sum. And we will try to keep it simple. And let us try to create a running sum. And what we could do is we can go to the measures table, right click, new measure, and your running. Let us try to name that as running total continuous. That way it is appropriate, right? So let me type it, running total continuous, right? Equal to, we will try to use the calculate function. Let me just type it out, calculate. And calculate for the expression, let us try to use the number of complaints. And for the filter, we could use all select, we'll use filter. And for the filter again, the table, it it expects a table as a first parameter. We will use all selected, and all selected a function ignores the filters that come from the visual and but respects filters that come from the slicers and filters outside the visual. So that part of it is done there because we want to use slices from outside. And for the expression for the filter, we'll say, hey, calendar table is less than or equal to max calendar table date. So calendar table date less than or equal to max of calendar table date will give you that is the expression for the filter. Let me just close the parenthesis for this. So this way what happens is the max date will always be the date of the current context, right? That is exactly what we want as shown here. So that is that way we have all the summation also is happening, and we will just get continuous running total. So let us commit to it, and if needed you can do the formatting. I'm adding the thousands separator and close it, and if you drag that onto the table visual, we can see that those values are being shown, right? For example, we are on June 2016 slicer, and for the subcategory we are on one of the animal abuse condition, so that's a complaint. So if you click on, say for example, January to January 4th is the first complaint. So every time if you see here, the total is continuous, right? In January it was 43 complaints for this particular category, and if you go to February, 43 plus 1 is 44. If I make any selections on those slicers, the values are changing. So let me just do one thing. The line graph, let me just swap out the number of complaints to, let me just use the recently created measure running total continuous. So the running total continuous line graph is also ready. So as you see here, as you click on those months, the values are incremental for running total. Obviously, that's a definition. And also, if the requirement is, the new requirement comes in and the new requirement needs you to kind of reset every month. So we could do that. So we want to make sure that we use the same kind of code, but probably add another line to achieve the result, right? We want the reset happening for the running total every month. So that way, the new requirement is also matched up. Like for example, if I'm clicking on other months, as you can see, even though the month is changing, the values are not resetting because the running total continuous is continuously summing up all the values in that particular column. So also on the graph, line graph, you see a flat line. So what I've done is I've added everything into a variable RT, and I've added in the return statement a condition. If is blank, number of complaints, then blank, otherwise give me the running total. So that way you can eliminate that flat line at some of the points on the line graph. So you want to remove that flat line for the running total. Like I said, if you click on any of the months, the total is continuous, and the graph is also accordingly showing those values, right? If you see May or April, the base at April 1st, already the running total is at a higher value, right? So that is one of the ways to create running total. In case if you want a continuous total, you can do that. Say for example, if the requirement changes and if you want a running total where the reset should happen every month. So if that is a new requirement, so what you could do is go to the previous measure what we have created, copy that part and try to create another measure. So once we try to create another measure, we'll just paste it here and we'll name it as running total with reset. So that way we have a clarity, right? We have created running total continuous, and also this is running total with reset. We have pasted the code here, and what we need to do is we need to tweak this particular code, right? So the requirement is that we need a reset every month. So what we could do is we can add values and we'll try to pass the month year to the values function. So this way, what happens is this values function is instrumental in reintroducing context to the calculation. So what happens is it brings back the original context of a table before any filters are applied. So this is how the calculation is filtered by month year. So that is exactly what we have done. There are several ways you can do it, but this is one of the methods which is simpler. And we have used all selected on the calendar table. And what we did is instead of adding only that part. We have added values, a calendar table month year, so that it will be reset by month and year. You can add your year, or depends on your needs, you can add your whatever field, right? Year, month, day, quarter, depends on your needs, right? So once we go back and try to drag that onto the table visual, and we see those values here. So let me just make sure that that is working. And this might take a little while because it's almost a million rows table. So let's see. Let's wait for that. Yep, it's working. As you can see, those are the two measures which we have created: running total continuous and running total with reset. So for example, if you look at it, for example, if you go back and click on, say, any of those months, and if you let me just make sure that I'm scrolling down, and as you can see on 131 and February, last day, after last day, every month at the start, those numbers are changing. That is exactly what we wanted, right? It is changing every month. Whenever the month ends, after that, the next day, it is taking up the first day value. As we scroll down further, we'll make sure that it is working properly for all the months. As shown here, 341 for May, first is 341, and for running total continuous, it is continuously adding up all the previous values. So that's the reason why you see the high number up there. And also if you see, all those values are also changing continuously for running total continuous. Whereas for running total with the reset, since we have added month year values, so that way every month it is changing, and it is resetting every month at the start. So that's another way of understanding. In case of the requirement changes, you can always tweak the code. And let me just play around with the slicer selections. So you can click on any of those months, those values will show up. And similarly, you can use the subcategory slicer too. Those values are changing. I think this is perfectly, we have calculated visual calculations initially. That is the fastest way. And also we have created a running total continuous. You could always use quick measures or any other methods, or you can create a calculated column too. But this is a simpler way of looking at it. You can just go ahead and make all the changes. Say, for example, if the new requirement comes, and the new requirement is that, hey, I want to use the relative date, right? So I don't want a month year. So I wanted to use a relative date. So if the requirement is that I want to see last 4 months, 4 weeks, 4 days, or whatever, right? So there is an option, right? In case if you swap out month year with the date column, and go to the properties format section for the visual, and if you look at the options, now you have a relative date. It was not available previously for month year. If you click on relative date, you have several options, right? So for example, if you just click on that, you have those three things showing up. I've just formatted so that it for look and feel. And if you see, those are the three fields which are available, and you can tweak the formatting whatever you want. And in case if you have a timestamp with the time, you can also add that to here. So it will give you those options also. And in our case, you can add anchor date. Our data is updated on the 14th of April. So let me add that value here, and I can include that day too. So let me just select 414. So this way also it is good, right? So even though today is not 14th of April, but we are trying to use an anchor date. So it makes sense if you make any selections there in that relative slicer selections, right? So if you click on that and add any of those, select on any of those options, days, months, a year. So you can look back those many days or months or weeks, depends upon your selection. Say, for example, if we want to see last day, last one day, that includes the 414, right? That is the anchor date. Even though it is today is not 414, you're able to see that, right? If you add the anchor date, it is pretty cool. And you can look back or look forward to weeks, months, years, etc. And as we play around, as you can see, calendar, obviously, it includes all the dates. So it is taking from 4/6 to 4/12. And if you click on months, if you want to look at last 1 month, and since our running total with reset is also resetting based on whenever the month changes, right? That is also working. And continuous running total is also showing up. So this way it is much more dynamic, and you are able to use a relative date slicer. You can look at last 3 years, last 4 years, or whatever, depends upon the data. You can look back number of periods what and based on your needs, right? So if you see the calendar year, it is obviously calendar year January 1st to December 31st. Since it's those dates are not available yet, those are not being shown here. Say, for example, if you click on, say, last 6 months, it is showing up. But if you click on months calendar, it will not show you year calendar, for example. It will not show you because the values are not yet available in 2025. So you can just play around. It's pretty easy to understand the relative date slicer. So you can make all those selections and those values are changing. I think this is a pretty different way of calculating running total, and you can use visual calculations fastest way, but those things will not go into the data model. Those reside on the visual. And in case if you use month year, if you want reset by a particular time period, you can do that. We have tweaked the code. We have added values on the date column and for the month year column, sorry. But in case if you want to expand that to a next level, and if you want to use a relative date slicer, all you have to do is swap out month year. Instead of month year, you have your date in that slicer. So that way you have the relative date option available. So this is pretty cool. As we play around, we can make all the selections, and this is pretty easy to understand these three methods. So you can apply the same knowledge to in your use case also. In case if you want to look at different dates, different years, or different quarters, you can do that. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.